Cool. God damn it. All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Non-Power Hour. We are your hosts with the most, Max and Garrett, here to deliver the podcast that no one wants but us, our breakdown every week on the smallest schools that we see competing in football, and with a surprise, not a guest, a surprise announcement, surprise picks, whatever, for the basketball season. Season starts in about 12 hours, or a little more than that, I guess. So first of all, Garrett's going to break down how we did last week and get into the show and program for this week. So Garrett, how did we each do with our picks last week?
Yeah, I think I need to go to a new line of work. It's been a rough sledding for me picking. In week
Slim
one,
pickings?
Slim pickings, as some might say. Week one, I went 1-8.
Yeah, you did.
And in week two, I improved to 4-5. But Max held steady at 5-4 both weeks. He's now 10-8 total. I am 5-13. But that's okay. We're gonna fight back here.
Yeah. This is your week. This is your week, buddy. I believe in you.
This is my week. Yeah. I have found a niche, and that's picking FCS games. I'm 2-0 in FCS games. I successfully picked Weber State last week. Max unsuccessfully for the second time picked Sacramento State.
Yeah, the sack did not come through.
But again, he wins the battle in the end with crucial picks over BYU, who floored Utah State 42-14, and then Fresno State picking up a late win in Hawaii on a buzzer-beating field goal. He picks that one correctly to give him the winning margin. So congratulations to you again, Max.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Max, I hear that your favorite team, which is not a non-power team, Minnesota. They are undefeated. You have a little spiel to do for them.
Yeah. This is why we're doing this work, Garrett. We're doing this work because we see the little guys out there not get the respect that they deserve, that they need to grow, to flourish, and to really take on these giants every week. And this week, unfortunately, my favorite team in the whole nation, besides the Gamecocks and like 20 others, the Minnesota Golden Gophers, got snubbed this week from a college game day bid, hosting Penn State, the other undefeated team in the Big Ten besides Ohio State. There's a chance for this flagship university to get their first ever college game day hosted and to show out in great numbers and support for this wonderful fan base. And instead, college game day went the easy route. They chose the 1v2 teams facing off each other. LSU playing Alabama. I get
it.
It's lame. You're right. And that's what the show's all about, Garrett. This show is about us giving respect to those poor teams that don't get it because they're not Alabama. They're not USC. They're not these other big heads, these traditional powerhouses. We got to stick out for the little guys. And that's why we're here today. And it's going to keep you fueled up for the rest of the whole year, probably. I know that Minnesota got this snub. Pulling for you guys. I almost bought a ticket to fly out there for my birthday. I was debating it hardcore. It was a little expensive. But I'll be there soon to cheer you all on, I promise. So that's my rant. That's why we're here, to give that support necessary to the teams that just don't get enough of it.
Well, hope you're rooting from afar gives them a little bit of spiritual power, I don't even know. It just pushes them in the right direction. They have a few tough games ahead of them, of course.
They do.
We're going to kick off this week with our 3 feature games. We have some very interesting games with conference implications. We're going to start out with the Shula Bowl. I'm not sure if you know what that is. You might be wondering, Shula, like Don Shula, like the Miami Dolphins. And it is Don Shula from the Miami Dolphins. But the Shula Bowl in college is actually the rivalry between FAU and FIU. They both had football programs that started with direct descendants from the coaching tree of Don Shula. I think it's such a lame name. They have such an opportunity being the 2 Florida FU schools that everyone mixes up. but they call it the Shula Bowl. I don't know why. Max, why don't you get us our
Yeah,
preview for this one?
happily, Garrett. Well, like you said, this is a rivalry game, and do you know what happens to the last big time rival that maybe was a big favorite at home, playing their little brother, ringing any bells a couple of weeks ago? Some Bulldogs were
Uh,
involved, some Gamecocks were involved.
oh, that's
That's
right.
right.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
right.
There you go.
Our boys, the Gamecocks, went in to Athens Stadium to beat the Bulldogs. Triumphant victory. This season has since been lost for us, but that's okay because I'm bringing that up because FIU, pretty heavy underdog here against FAU, but they've got a pretty strong pass defense. I love the rushing attack, and I believe that their quarterback, James Morgan, that offense will do their best to control the clock against a very high-flying, powerful offense at FAU to really frustrate them, to limit possessions, and to come out on top. And with Lane Kiffin admitting this past week that he is very interested in the Florida State job opening since the firing of Willie Taggart, I think that those players will be a little demoralized, not play with their hearts like they did maybe earlier last season especially, and I think FIU comes in and gets that dub. But that's my thoughts, Garrett. How are you feeling about it?
Well, maybe I should just start to agree with you. Maybe I should just draft off your picks,
Yeah.
But I have to go against you here. Florida Atlantic has won 6 out of 7 games. They beat a good Western Kentucky team last week. James Morgan has been having a great year for Florida International for sure. But their defense has been sketchy, especially in the red zone. They've given up 27 out of 28 red zone trips. They've given up scores on 27 of them.
Hell yeah.
They themselves have scored 33 times on 43 red zone trips, much less efficient. Again, James Morgan has been really good, but this is Lane Kiffin. As much as I hate him, I grew up in Southern California. He, as a big UCLA fan, and he was coaching for USC during some of UCLA's darker moments. He actually lived next door to one of my dad's good friends in Manhattan Beach. Shout out to Neil Gervais if he's listening, which he's not because nobody's listening. But
not yet.
He's not yet listening.
Yeah.
But Lane Kiffin he's obviously got a talented mind. He's been on Alabama's coaching staff during national championship years. Yeah, he's getting rumored for the Florida State job because he's maybe not a great leader of men, but definitely has a great offensive mind. He's going to out-coach. And here's the thing. Florida International doesn't even have one defensive coordinator. They have co-defensive coordinators. They can't even decide who they want to be the defensive coordinator. He's going to out-coach the crap out of those guys. They're having 200 rushing yards a game. I think Florida Atlantic picks up the win here on the road.
Cool. Well, then that takes us to our next matchup, the Battle of Ivy League Prowess, the top Brainiacs versus the top Brainiacs. Dartmouth, the Mean Green or the Green Wave versus Big Green, one of those, versus the Princeton. I don't even know what Princeton is.
Tigers.
Tigers. That would make sense. Yeah, they've got the stripes. Garrett, clearly you know more about them than I do. Give us your best prediction here. Who wins this FCS matchup? Your coup de grace.
Max, we're going to need to shore up your FCS mascot knowledge. For those who don't know, Max and I are at least on the FBS level, we are mascot fiends. We pretty much know the mascot for every single FBS school there is. But evidently, Max needs to shore up on the FCS level. We actually were just on Princeton's campus the other.
Yeah, we were
in their student store. I was sitting in their stadium. It's a surprise to me that he doesn't know what their mascot is, but I digress. Both teams are rolling right now. This is obviously a matchup of 2 7-0 squads. For those who don't know, the Ivy League only plays a 10-game conference, a 10-game schedule, and they do not participate in the postseason because it interferes with their academics in December. And they continue to do that. That's a rule that's been in place for several years, but continues on to this day. But yeah, they're both 7-0. They're gunning for the Ivy League conference title, which is basically everything for them. Princeton has pretty much – both teams have really been an offensive juggernaut. Princeton and Dartmouth averaging about 38 points per game. Princeton hasn't scored less than 21 points a game in any game this season. The defenses are giving up very few points. Princeton's defense giving up 14 points a game. Dartmouth about 10 points a game. And Princeton's turned over the ball 4 times all season to having 15 takeaways. One interesting stat, actually, Dartmouth first downs, they've gained 133, but they've allowed 130. Meanwhile, Princeton has 43 more first downs in the whole season. Evidently, I've been doing my research here. But here's the thing. Last week, Princeton did not have too much of a problem with Cornell. They only scored 121-7. The week before, they were challenged by Harvard, but they won by 6 points. Dartmouth, on the other hand, played Harvard last week, and if you haven't seen the highlight for how that game ended, they scored on a Hail Mary touchdown at the end of that game to win 9-6. So before the last play of the game, they had scored 3 points all game. They were held to 2.1 yards per carry. And I think the key here is Princeton's got the blueprint now to by Harvard, their rivals. I guess they're all rivals, but they have the blueprint now to take them out, how to hold them to low scoring. I think Princeton's going to get this win. Shout out to Dartmouth, by the way. They were the ones who invented the robotic tackling dummy. Mini small school shout out there. But no, I got the Princeton Tigers here. Max, are you feeling like countering me on this?
I do, Garrett, as most of the time I do, and oftentimes in the FCS level it goes wrong, but I'm sticking with my guns here. I like Dartmouth here for many reasons. One, they're the home team, and I think that does play a big part. And you're right, Harvard did handle Dartmouth really well all game last week up until those very last moments. I don't know if you've seen like the win probability charts, but Harvard was always the favorite up until the last 10 seconds of the game during this Hail Mary play. I think Dartmouth's just got the it factor. I think that they have a quarterback who just wants to win, is willing his team to win apparently, in Mr. Derek Kyler, sharing his name with Kyler Murray, perhaps, the Heisman Trophy winner. I don't know. So I think that this team continues to roll, defends its home turf. Derek Kyler and his dual threat abilities can carry this team on to continue their undefeated tirade over the Ivy League schools. So I see Dartmouth winning. It'll be a close game, no doubt. Princeton will put up a heck of a fight, but I do think Dartmouth pulls this one out.
I see you, Max. The big green.
Big green, damn it.
Right. The Ivy League has 2 bigs. They have the big green and the big red. So if you're afraid of colors, you might want to stay away from the Ivy League.
When does Syracuse get the bid to join the Ivy Leagues to be the big orange?
Or the Stanford Cardinal, one of the other, like the Ivy League school of the West.
Yeah, essentially.
We're going to go from the Ivy League to the much smarter MAC.
Hell yeah.
The most underrated country conference in the country in terms of intelligence. We got a Wednesday night game for you between Miami of Ohio and Ohio. This is, according to Wikipedia and a few online sites, this is called the Battle of the Bricks between the 2 Ohio schools. Max, our Max-shin expert.
Yep, always.
What are you feeling here?
What am I feeling? Well, Garrett, I do love the MAC. I remember I fell first in love with it when Jordan Lynch was out there.
Oh, I love Jordan Lynch.
Running the Tide with Northern Illinois. I loved him so much I almost applied to Northern Illinois just to be in his presence. And then I realized how good it was academically, so I decided not to do it, or vice versa.
Also because he graduated several years before he would have on campus.
Probably a little bit. But yeah, anyway, going back to this game, the battle for Ohio, the battle of the bricks. I have Miami of Ohio coming out with the dub here, despite going to the University of Ohio's stadium. I choose them for a couple reasons. First of all, Miami of Ohio has lost 4 games. 3 of them are to ranked FBS teams in Cincinnati, Iowa, and Ohio State. they weren't close to any of those games. But if you played that high level competition, you get some pretty good experience. And I think your team's going to learn a lot from it and grow. They've done very well so far in Maction, despite their only big blemish so far was a loss at Western Michigan, where their quarterback Brett Garrett threw 3 picks. Don't know what happened that game. But that's been the only real challenge they've had in the MAC so far. So I look to see them come out firing to be the 3rd best school in Ohio, behind Cincinnati and Ohio State, to beat Ohio to stay atop the MAC East, I believe. And I think that this is a good defensive team to be able to hold down what Ohio can throw at them as well. So that's my pick there. Miami of Ohio, the Red Hawks. Going out there.
See, Max coming back, knowing the MAC schools.
Exactly.
Once again, Max, not so fast as Lee Corbett.
Not so fast.
On paper, these teams look pretty similar. They're both 4-4, 3-1 in conference. They have both won 3 of their last 4 games after pretty sizable losses. Miami, Ohio, to the aforementioned Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio Bobcats lost by 20 to the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. And they both have 7-point wins over Kent State in their last 5 games. These are pretty mediocre teams, offensively and defensively.
Yep.
Defensively, Ohio is ranked 10th in the MAC. They're giving up 466 yards per game. Miami of Ohio, 5th in the MAC, almost 400. But offensively, those rankings switch almost. Ohio, 5th, and Miami of Ohio, 11th. And the difference there is much sizable between them, about 120 yards per game offensively. What I think it comes down to here is quarterback experience. Miami, Ohio is trotting out Brett Gabbert. He's a freshman, younger brother of Blaine Gabbert. He's a freshman, and he's thrown in conference. He's thrown in conference only 52% completion percentage. Meanwhile, Ohio counters with senior Nathan Rourke. He's thrown for 63% in conference. He didn't have a great game last time out. He only went 8 for 16, 131 yards and touchdowns. But he's still a senior, and he has 10 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Brett Gabbert, only 5 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Not that he can't play, but I think that the senior leadership, home game, they're going to get the win. Ohio was picked as the division and conference champs. I think that's for a reason. I think their experience wins out, and they'll get the win here. So that concludes our 3 main games, and we're going to move on to our upset specials.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. I'm going to start out. This isn't too much of an upset, but I'm going to go with the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers over the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Hell yeah.
Arkansas has had, over the last few seasons, they have had some pretty bad losses. This year, they lost to perennial Mountain West bottom feeder San Jose State, 31-24. Now, San Jose State's much improved this year. They also have a 7-point win over FCS school, Portland State. They're only 5-5 in the FCS.
Fuck yeah.
Western Kentucky has been very strong in the Conference USA. I think this is another chance for the Conference USA to pick up a big win over the SEC. I have Western Kentucky. I think this line only opened up at 2.5 points. I'm going to check that right now, but I got Western Kentucky getting the win at Arkansas. I think this one has upset written all over it. That's my upset special.
Just see Arkansas lose even more. I don't know how they're still in the SEC. They should be relegated to the FCS at this point. But is it they're starting a new quarterback, I think I saw. So we'll see if he can provide some spark to that team. But my pick is a little different. The most unique pick, I guess, so far, because we're actually sticking with a Power 5 conference for upset. I have the Illinois Fighting Illini coming out on top over Michigan State this week. We've tossed around the idea of like trying to stick at least to the lower tier Power 5 conferences, and I think we'll break the ice this week with this pick. Illinois has been doing very well as of late. They did lose a couple of games in a row earlier on in the season to some pretty good Big Ten teams,
Hey,
yeah, and I just really like what they've done recently. I think the defense has become a lot more stout since losing to Minnesota, as well as Nebraska and Michigan. They were able to beat Wisconsin, of course, a couple of weeks ago, beat Purdue and Rutgers pretty handedly. It's just been a team that's come along late. I think Michigan State's slid a lot. They've lost 2 games in a row, granted all to top 10 teams at the time in Ohio State, I believe Iowa and Wisconsin. And next week they are playing Michigan. So I think that despite this bye week, they may still be looking a little bit too far ahead, and could get surprised again, quite frankly, by the Fighting Illini. Their quarterback, Brandon Peters, has had a solid season, not the most efficient, but they've done really well to rely on their running game. And again, that defense just held teams in check. We know Michigan State's got a pretty poor offense, and a defense that looked really strong a while ago has kind of fallen off as well. So I just think that Illinois continues rumbling. Michigan State continues to fall as they look too far ahead in their schedule, especially. And then Illinois comes out on top this week.
And I just want to point out that here at the Non-Power Hour, we give love to those, even those top power conference schools that don't get the love that they deserve, always being overlooked. The Illinois of the world. Lovey Smith. Lovey Smith. Nobody really gave them a fighting chance this season, obviously coming up with one of the bigger wins of the season over Wisconsin. Quick update that the line is at 2.5 for Western Kentucky, so look for Ty Story and company to jump all over Arkansas. But back to you, Max. You got our small school of the week.
Hell yeah. My favorite part of the program, where we highlight the smallest of the small schools for doing something no one heard about, no one knew about, and just to give a little bit more light shed on these wonderful programs nationwide. This week, sticking with the theme of Minnesota, I chose the real UMD, although I work at another UMD in UMass Dartmouth. I've chosen the University of Minnesota at Duluth. This is a 10,000-person school nestled on the western bank of Lake Superior, which is one of the large universities in the States. As a result, it's actually founded originally as the normal school for teachers.
Lame.
Just a university for teachers to learn how to teach and to get their degrees in their master's programs. But quickly did transition, or not quickly, eventually transitioned in 1947 to be integrated into the University of Minnesota system, where it is today. For those that don't know where Duluth is or know much about the city, it is very cold. It has had freezing temperatures all the way up until August, apparently.
That's garbage.
And it is the second snowiest city, in the U.S., behind only one other Minnesota town called International Falls, nestled in the middle of the state as well, on the north side. But thankfully, the Duluth Trading Company makes some very good warm underwear to keep your nether regions warm.
And they have those commercials, too.
They do. That's the only reason why I know who they are, from the amazing commercials they have to make sure that your nether regions don't freeze and fall off.
They're important.
Yeah, very important. But, back to why I'm choosing University of Minnesota Duluth here. Well, like I said in the introduction, Minnesota should have gotten that recognition with College Game Day. So I wanted to shout out that school just to give them a little more program awareness, especially. Additionally, it's supposed to snow this weekend where I live right now in Massachusetts. So I thought, what's the snowiest city that I know of? And Duluth is right up there. And lastly, they've won a couple of national championships recently in hockey, if you didn't know. So the hockey
Yeet.
season, yeah, hockey season is underway again. Teams battling out on the Frozen Four eventually, and University of Minnesota Duluth, good lord, has won 2 years in a row and lost a third year in the finals to the University of Denver, which had one of the best records in the last 10 years. Since 2000 in college hockey. So they've been a powerhouse for a couple of years now, and I wanted to highlight this small school of the week for those reasons, to give Minnesota some more light, and as we get ready for hockey season and the snowy season. So, University of Minnesota Duluth, you are our small school of the week. Congrats.
Now we're going to get into our quick picks for football. Get us started with the first game, Max.
Happily, Garrett. Our first game we've chosen is Wyoming and Boise State. This will be a home game for Boise State, and I look for them to get back on track after losing a couple of weeks ago and having a very close game this past weekend. I think that their quarterback Bachmeier will find a great way to score on this very good defense for Wyoming, but they'll come out on top in the end. So go Buck and Broncos, beat the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think that the key is Bachmeier coming back. They had Chase Cord going there for a while. He performed valiantly, but I'll always take Boise State on the blue field. I think they've won 9 games ever since the blue field was installed in like 2001 or something like that. So they're pretty unbeatable at home. They have one of the best home field advantages in the sport. It's going to be cold. Not that Wyoming cares about that. I have Boise State here.
Nice.
We're going to move on to another game in the Fun Belt. We got Georgia State, ULM. I like Georgia State here. They have a 4-game winning streak. Louisiana Monroe has lost a couple. I think Sean Elliott's really hitting his stride. The offense is figuring some stuff out. I'll take Georgia State on the road here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that they had their week off and just come back even fresher to continue those winning ways and play against a pretty mediocre Warhawk team down in Monroe, Louisiana. So I agree. I see Georgia State coming out on top again. Love to see Sean Elliott, alumnus coach of USC, continuing on his success. So next we will stick with the Conference USA as we look at the University of North Texas playing Louisiana Tech this week. I'll start off by just saying this is going to be a very high-scoring game, I imagine. These are two teams with very potent offenses and pretty lackluster defenses. So I see this game being a very close battle the entire way through and coming down to a game-winning drive. And who else would I like to see lead that drive, or who else I think is more confident than the senior quarterback for North Texas, Mason Fine, as he continues his efforts to try and grow his draft stock. So I see North Texas coming out, putting up the upset against Louisiana Tech this week. But Garrett, how do you see this game shaping up?
I think Mason Fine is a fine quarterback. He's already got 27 touchdown passes this year. He's probably going to get his career high in touchdown passes in the next 3 games, which is 31. But as good as Fine has been, Jamar Smith has been very consistent. Has had over 200 yards in every start this season, only 2 interceptions. Obviously, Louisiana Tech at the top of their division in Conference USA. And I think that North Texas has, every time they've won a game this season, they've lost the following game. I think their defense lets them down. They have a pretty bottom-of-the-barrel defense this season. I think Mason Fine throws a key pick at the end of the game. Sorry, buddy. And I have Louisiana Tech pulling this one out to stay on top.
Nice.
So we're gonna shift gears. We're gonna go out west again. We have Liberty and BYU. This is a very interesting matchup between independents. It seems like the independents always find each other in the end. BYU has an impressive slate of victories. Tennessee, USC, Utah State, and I'm forgetting the other one. But they have those games, and then they've lost to teams like South Florida. In the meantime, they're 4-4. I think it's going to come down to Stephen Calvert, the quarterback for Liberty, his nickname is Buckshot Calvert. That means that automatically means he's a freaking badass. Like, he literally never misses his targets. Last week he threw 20 for 27, 474 yards, and 4 tutties. They destroyed UMass. It's UMass. We've gone in depth about UMass this year. That doesn't take away how great a performance that was. He hasn't thrown an interception in the last 7 games while throwing 19 touchdowns. He's going to lead them to one of those weird BYU losses this year. Max, feeling the same way?
I'm not, Garrett. I think that you're right. BYU's lost some pretty bad games and won some pretty good ones, and I definitely think they're the more talented team here, which means that all signs point to them losing, but I think they figured it out this week. I think playing at home, continuing some momentum from previous victories will keep them going. I like BYU here. I see them coming on top over the high-flying Liberty offense. I think that defense can hold its own on the home turf out in Mormon country, Utah. So the final game we'll be looking at very quickly is another one I believe in CUSA. Southern Miss taking on UAB. So I like this matchup a lot. I think it's very interesting with how the quarterbacks have fared so far this season, and that they fared very poorly. They have thrown a crap ton of picks so far this season. Johnson himself has thrown, I believe 13 picks to 15 touchdowns. And I think that he'll throw many more. Even though USM has a shaky defense, I think they'll get a turnover late in the game when they need it most, and bring home the gold. So look out for Southern Miss to win this game, again, off of another Johnston turnover.
The gold for the Golden Eagles.
The gold for the Golden Eagles.
I think, you're right. The 22 combined picks between them is probably some sort of high this season. A lot of interceptions. But I like UAB on the road. Their defense has been superior this season. They have allowed about 17 points a game. I think it's anybody's guess who wins this game, but I have them close. Obviously, turnovers are going to be the story. But UAB's having a really strong resurgence after their football program was disbanded a few years ago. So it's what a great story that is. And UAB, I got them winning here again. So as usual, you and I disagree on most of our picks. But we're going to move into a fun part of our show. Maybe we'll there's many, many teams to choose from.
Yeah.
And that's because we're getting into college basketball season. It starts tomorrow, both women and men. I promise we'll get some more women's basketball games in the future. But for today, we only had time for a little bit of preview on the men's side. So Max and I are going to go over a team that we think is going to make a great run, a couple of upset picks we have for the first week of games, and finally a team that we're pulling for, which is the section that I've been waiting to do forever. So here we are. Without further ado, Max Charloni, who is your team that you think will make a big run this season?
Yeah, absolutely, Garrett. Well, it's a team that we've already highlighted today. I actually picked them to lose, but I do see the Liberty Flames doing very well this season. They did well last season as well and returned 5 of their top 6 scorers, to include 6'8" forward Scotty James and their 6'6" guard Caleb Holmesley. This is a starting lineup that's coming back mostly intact. Again, they have 4 or 5 stars returning. They have a pretty soft schedule out of conference as well, so I think they can rack up a lot of wins to earn themselves a bid in the tournament at the very least. And I think that all that experience coming back, having really 2 seasons of the same starters, will pay dividends coming late in the season. They only have one game that's really the only one ranked game, and that's against LSU pretty early on in the season. The number 22 in the nation, but that's really Vanderbilt a week before that. So I just think that the softness of the schedule, the returning starters, all lead Liberty to come back really strong this year and make a deep tournament run in the off season. So I have the Liberty Flames being my dark horse candidates for a deep playoff run.
Strong pick, Max. I'll go with another 12 seed from last year's NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
The New Mexico State Aggies.
Yeah.
They had 30 wins last year. They went 30-5, including the loss in the tournament, which, by the way, was a very close loss to the eventual Final Four, nearly national semifinal. Auburn Tigers really got hosed, I think, but that's for another show. But New Mexico State's bringing back 4 or 5 starters. I think that's key. Terrell Brown, their leading scorer, is back. Ivan, sorry, buddy. I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Arcochea.
Close enough.
And A.J. Harris, Trevlin Queen. These are all guys that'll be back. A.J. Harris, Terrell Brown leading their very strong, dynamic backcourt. They're also bringing in Wilfred Likai from Casper College as a possible paint addition. He had a great season last year in junior college. They have some opportunities to really boost their resume with games against Arizona, Mississippi State, and Colorado State. But it's not. They're pretty much going to make it to, barring something unforeseen. They play in the WAC, and that is one of the weakest conferences in college basketball. It's a fun conference to watch. Grand Canyon's in that conference. They have a great home court atmosphere, for instance. But they should walk into definitely the number 1 seed in the tournament, and should easily, hopefully, win out that tournament, hopefully for their sake. But if they don't, they'll have an opportunity to pick up some wins this season. Last year, they almost knocked out Kansas. So look for them to really to really maybe make it to the second weekend this year in college basketball.
Cool. Well then, Garrett, I think we'll go to the next segment, which is picking our upsets for this week. We chose 2 of them. We'll go through those pretty quickly. The 2 that I chose. First, I have Presbyterian College upsetting Clemson on Thursday the 7th. These are 2 young and inexperienced teams, and Clemson plays a pretty big early game on their first game tip-off tomorrow against Virginia Tech. So I just think that they come in 2 days later, they're a little tired, still very new, to a very fresh and excitable Presbyterian College team. Again, both teams are just so young. I think it's going to be, anyone's game, and I see PC, Presbyterian College, the Blue Hose, coming out on top here against Clemson. And later on in the week, on Saturday, I have another upset happening with Stony Brook over Seton Hall. Stony Brook had a really good season last year in the Atlantic 10 Conference, I believe, finishing second. Seton Hall comes in up 23rd in the nation, and I don't really know who they have returning and why they're so highly ranked. I think they're just they've been a powerhouse. They've been pretty good the last couple of years. I think just have a good record is why they're coming in ranked highly, but I see Stony Brook as similarly returning some pretty good starters, most of the starters, to be honest. So I see them just meshing very well early on in the season and creating an upset to Seton Hall. So look out for those 2 games.
Strong selections. I am in agreement with you. I'll get to that in my second game. My first game is it's kind of a long shot here. Bowling Green at LSU. Bowling Green hasn't made the NCAA tournament since 1968.
Yeah.
But they are the co-favorites along with Toledo, another team that hasn't been to the tournament in a while, in the MAC. They have a lot of key players returning. Last year, they were picked to finish last. They won 22 games. They almost went to the tournament. This year, they have high expectations. One of their key players is named Justin Turner. If you're a baseball fan, you know that he's the absolute legend that holds down the hot corner for the Los Angeles Dodgers, the 2020 World Series champs.
That one.
But they're going into LSU. First game of the season on Friday. They're without Tremont Waters and Naz Reid, 2 of their key players from last year. They do have some key players returning, like Smart and Javon Smart, I think is his name. But unfortunately, They have a lot of off-season distractions this year. We don't really know how that's affecting the team, if it's affecting the team. But I have Bowling Green. They could really put LSU on alert here. My second game also involves Clemson and after Presbyterian. I do not foresee Presbyterian being able to defeat Clemson. I think that while Clemson is just lost 2 projected starters to ACL injuries, they probably will be able to handle their Big South opponent. But their next game after that is against Colgate, who was a 15 seed in the tournament last year, nearly beat Tennessee, who for several weeks held the number 1 ranking last year. Some think that this is their best team in history. They have 2 forwards, Will Raymond and Rapolis Ivanauskas, won a bunch of awards last year in the Patriot League. I think they have a real shot after Clemson fights through their first game against Virginia Tech and then easily coast to victory. I think they won't see it coming.
With a loss. Damn.
I think they won't see it coming.
Damn.
We're going to move on to the final section. One team that we're pulling for this season, Max.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You have South Carolina, Minnesota, UMass, like Texas Tech. We went on spring break one time. We met some really nice girls on the Texas Tech basketball team. Super cool.
Yeah.
Played volleyball with them.
Yeah.
But who are you pulling for this year?
Yeah, Garrett. Well, this is another basketball specific team that I always pull for in the tournaments. A team from the Big East that no one seems to give any love to, the Providence Friars.
Ooh.
Yeah. They're pretty good. They're not like a super dark horse, but they never make it that far in the tournament. They're never that good. But it's a beautiful city, first of all. I love Providence a lot. I was there on Sunday for a Halloween Jack-o'-lantern festival at the zoo. It's a pretty bumping town. I'm quite a fan, and being so close to it now just gives me even more satisfaction pulling for these guys. But the biggest reason why I'm choosing Providence, 2 names, 1 guy, Alpha Diallo. Only way his name could be better if he was Alpha Diablo, the great devil or number 1 devil or whatever. But we gotta keep it a little PC there for Providence College. But Alpha led his team undoubtedly in 4 categories that season: scoring, rebounds, assists, and steals. He is a senior returning this year for his final year in college basketball, trying to make a name for himself, bringing his team to victory. And the other X factor that I see in this team, a good old locally homegrown South Carolina boy going out there and helping to lead this team to success, much like John Morant and Zion Williamson did for their respective programs. I've got Jimmy Nichols, who led the team in blocks last year as well.
Dang, the only one that Diallo wasn't leading the team.
Yeah, exactly. So I see him taking this giant John Morant step forward this year. Along with the other returners for this team, I think Providence can do some great things in the Big East and make some huge noise this year. So I'm pulling for them this season, hoping they do some great things. And hope I go see a game or 2 because it's like 30 minutes down the road from me. But Garrett, I know this is why you're here. This is the real reason you wanted to have this program, to talk about your team, to put on notice.
That's right.
This season. Who is it, Garrett?
Okay, well, this is gonna double because I didn't really prepare for a closing section. So this is gonna be double as my closing section. The team that I'm pulling for this year, the Chicago State Cougars, out of the WAC. We're sticking with the WAC. Yep. Have you never heard of them? You're probably not the only person out there. It's because they don't win games. Like, they haven't actually won any games. They are one of the worst teams in the last 5 seasons in college basketball. Maybe one of the worst 5 season stretches in college basketball history. Let me paint a picture for you here. In the 2012-2013 season, they went 11-22. They were a part of the Great West Conference. That was a 5-team conference which did not have an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. So the winner of the tournament would go to like one of those like CIT, CBI, like those really tiny conference tournaments. They actually won they went 3-5 in conference play, but they won their conference tournament, so they went to the tournament. The following year, they joined the WAC, which does have an automatic bid. There were only 7 teams in there for a while. Now it's up to 9. They went 13-19, 8-8 in the WAC, very respectable. The following year, 2014-2015, they went 8-24, 4-10 in the WAC. The last 4 seasons, they have 16 wins. Only 6 of those are D1 wins. So 10 of those wins were against D2 or lower. So they have an average of 1.5 Division I wins in the last 4 seasons. They have 2 conference wins the last 4 seasons combined. They get a half conference win a year the last 4 years. Last year, they defeated Eastern Illinois. That was actually part of a 3-game winning streak. Wow. It was sandwiched by 2 lesser division wins. The year before, they had – those are the only 3 wins of the season, by the way. The year before, they had 3 wins. Another D1 win. It was a conference win, Missouri, Kansas City. The year before, they actually won 6 games. 3 of them were D1. And the year before that, they only had 1 D1 win. So, I mean, this is just an awful team. And apparently, from according to one source I read online, they're returning 1 player. So it can't get much worse. They actually signed 2 Canadian players, and the Canadians have been putting out some pretty fresh talent, you know.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll do better. They got Coach Lance Irvin going to the 2nd season, and in September they hired Eric Hyman as athletic director. He was a former South Carolina athletic director.
Oh, of course
he hired Dawn Staley, legend basketball coach for the women's side, won the national championship. He also was the athletic director at TCU and Texas A&M. But he didn't sign an indefinite deal or even a multi-year deal. He signed a deal for 2 months because their program is so bad, with an option for a 3rd month. So his 2 months are about up. I haven't seen any news about him stepping down or being replaced. But some of his key hires were Staley, as I just mentioned. He hired Kevin Sumlin at Texas A&M, Gary Patterson at TCU.
Dang.
So he has some good hires. But this team, part of the reason why they're so bad is their financials are poor, to say the least. As recently as 2016, they declared a financial emergency. They canceled spring break, and they moved up graduation because their funds are drying up.
God.
So if you want a team to root for, the Chicago State Cougars, let's see if they can get more than 1 Division I win. Yeah. And if they only get 1 or 2 Division I wins, whoever loses those games should be relegated to the NAIA.
Yeah. To Canadian football.
That's my spiel. That's our show for today.
Yeah.
Thank you for sticking with us. It's been a pretty long episode. We hope you enjoy watching sports this weekend.
Yeah.
Max Stacks, any final thoughts?
Just, as we get this GoFundMe started for Chicago State to hire, at least the 3rd month of this great director, just be on the lookout. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. No, it's just Twitter for now, sorry. Hit that that follow, whatever it is on Twitter, and we will see y'all next week. Yeah, enjoy tip-off. Excited to see some small schools dominate.
All right.
Backboards.
And it's a wrap for us. See y'all next week on the Non-Power Hour.